Hold up. My views are my own. You heard it here first. You heard it here first. You heard it here first. Lightning round. Dangerously close.
My guest today is D. Elliot Woods. Elliot became a staple in the Star Trek franchise universe amongst his many other on-camera credits, but more recently he shifted his creative talents into writing and narrating the intense suspense thriller book/audiobook Rise of the Unicorn. Creatively, Woods is best known for his talents as an actor and filmmaker in Hollywood. He has emerged on screen as both human and alien characters in several projects in the Star Trek franchise, as well as roles on SWAT, NCIS, LA, Ballers, Hot in Cleveland, Friends, Drake and Josh, and appearances in over 100 commercials for major brands. As a creator, Woods writes, produces, and directs his projects under his Fly Free Entertainment production banner, including the 2020 psychological thriller short film Life and Lemons, calling attention to domestic violence. What's up, Elliot?
Man, how you doing this morning?
Well, okay, first of all, I want to bring up like what I said I was going to. I have a brand new office chair, and you have a brand new office chair. So I think we're both like, I think that this might be one of the best interviews that's ever happened on this podcast, because everyone's
at least, if nothing else, I may suck as an interviewee, but I know we'll both be comfortable, and that's what matters.
Yeah. Well, people don't realize that I was actually sitting slightly uncomfortably in some of my past interviews, and now I look at me. I'm just, this is an audio only podcast. Nobody can see what I'm doing, but I'm just flowing free, man. Just feel like
I was gonna say you look like a whole new person.
I'm on a cloud, man.
It's a beautiful thing. Yeah, I had to get one too because my old chair wasn't supporting my hips very well.
Yeah,
and so I when I got in this chair, it was like, this is home. So Believe me, I understand.
Yeah, this one's really supports my back, and like I'm always hurting my back because I fall a lot. I do a lot of like. I do a lot of shit for some of my age, like I skateboard and stuff like that. So I'm always busting my ass.
That dude, okay.
I am that dude. So I need back support. So anyway, everyone at home, I just want to let you know our chairs are comfortable. And Elliot, I want to tell you, man, I've been listening to the audiobook version of your book, Rise of the Unicorn. And I just want to say,
oh, very cool.
Yes, I have. And I just want to say a few things before we kind of get started on what we're talking about. But
okay.
And first of all, I want to say the story got me hooked immediately. Like chapter 1, I was like, I want to know how this ends. Where's this going? Just like that. I love the character. Right. I love the characters. I love the suspense. And normally, like for how I do books, like I kind of prefer like my fiction books. I like to just like read a hard copy, like in my hands. That's how I do fiction. Right. And I kind of prefer like for audiobooks, I'm more of a nonfiction. Like that's where I do, I listen to more nonfiction on audiobooks.
Gotcha.
But in your audiobook, man, the voice acting is excellent. And I kind of feel like I'd be missing out if I wasn't listening to the audiobook. And I truly mean that. I feel like I'm getting an extra whole element by doing an audiobook version of fiction, which is not the most common way I listen to fiction.
Doug, man, I really appreciate that because that's a surprise. Usually people, they may know about the book or something, but wow, to actually have done that. But I got to tell you, it was one of the hardest things I've ever done because you know how life works. It's like you have plans and God laughs. I literally had 10 of my actor friends lined up, and I had rented a studio not too far from my house. And then we kept running into scheduling problems where 8 people could come, but not the other 2, and so on and so forth. But long story short, I one day it hit me because this happened seriously 8 times where I had to cancel the recording sessions. And then it hit me one day that in order to get this done, I was going to have to do it myself. And so that's what I ended up doing. I've got a booth, here at the house, but it's a small one, and it was like, you know what? I'm going to do this thing. So I ended up doing 55 different characters for this book.
Yeah, it's amazing. The thing is,
like a psychopath.
I was listening to it, and I'm like, I can't believe this is all one guy.
one guy with severe issues, man. Yeah, that part was cool.
And I promise not to do any spoilers, but I do want to bring it because you kind of kick it off, this is not a spoiler because this is kind of just how the book starts. But it's a hostage negotiation, and you're doing the voice of Gus, the hostage negotiator.
Right.
But then at the same time, you're doing the voice. It's a domestic dispute. You're doing the voice of the husband and the wife, and it's masterfully done.
Thank you.
It's the kind of thing, honestly, man. I think you take you're an average 100 voice actors, professionals, and put them in that situation and say, make this work. And I don't think I think 90 people couldn't do it. Maybe 10 could, that's.
Man, thank you. That was, it was a hell of a first swing at the plate. But I'd also have to give a shout out to my dear friend, Nicole J. Butler. She did play the Commissioner Evelyn Kennedy. She did that role for me because I realized that particular character needed her own distinctive voice that you could count on. But the rest of it was me, and I was scared to death until I got to about chapter 3, and then I was like, all right, let's get comfortable here.
She was fantastic as well. I want to shout out just one more character. Top of the top of my head, I can't think of his name. He's an elderly gentleman. He's in a bank talking
Patrick
to
Henry.
Man, so well done. So he was kind of clearly kind of a ladies' man in his day. Now he's a much older man. And you nailed that on the head, man. I was like, this guy feels real. This voice feels real. And so, anyway, man, you know what?
No, thank you. No, really, thank you. That was gave me goosebumps. That's a great thing right after Thanksgiving.
Hell yeah! Oh yeah, and happy Thanksgiving, man. I guess this won't be coming out for a week, so Thanksgiving will be a distant memory to everyone in a few days. But
well, they started the Christmas music September 1st, so no biggie.
Mariah Carey has arrived.
Exactly. Yeah, she is sitting on your shoulder now.
So before we get into the book any further, which I do want to do,
sure.
Obviously I do have to ask this because you are a part of the Star Trek universe, and
yes, sir.
You know what? And the philosophy of Star Trek is starting to become a recurring theme on this podcast. I had a Vulcan on a while back, and I had a professor and a journalist that were on the show for completely different subjects. They both used Star Trek as analogies to get their point across. That was to them, it seemed like, oh, well, let me explain it to you through Star Trek. And I think people do that often. But so what I wanted to ask you, since you've been on Star Trek in more than one character, more than one iteration. You did Deep Space Nine, Enterprise, the film Insurrection, I believe.
Yes, sir. Sure did.
I just wanted to ask, how do you feel about Star Trek? How do you feel about what it means? What's it? What's its purpose? Other than besides just entertainment. And were you interested in it before you became a part of it?
I was interested in it as a kid. I have a cousin that we used to play together all the time, and we would sit up and watch these old episodes with James Kirk and Spock and McCoy and everybody. And that was actually the first time that I ever said out loud, I want to be on TV. But what was funny is I specifically said, man, I wish I could be on Star Trek.
Yeah.
And so that was planted early. And then it was the damnedest thing when I went, get out to Hollywood 1,000 years later. And I think the first one was Deep Space Nine. I honestly couldn't believe I was on the set. I really couldn't. And I was playing oh, good grief. What is Worf? A Klingon.
Yeah.
So I was a Klingon officer on that. And that's the only episode or Star Trek project that I ever got killed on. But it was so funny to me because I've got a reasonably deep voice. Yours is deeper, so maybe you should consider Star Trek. But one of the things about Klingons is that they generally have, fairly deep voices. So you take your register down to here.
Yeah.
And what was funny is all my scenes were either with Michael Dorn, who played Worf, and or Tony Todd, who plays his brother Kern, but he's also very well known for playing the role of Candyman. But he's got this, both of them just have these really resonant, deep voices. And then there's me. And I just, when we were rehearsing, I kept laughing because I sounded like I was in third grade compared to those guys. It was just hilarious. But I love the Star Trek themes. And to be honest with you, even though it's done in, quote, civilian real life for Rise of the Unicorn, a lot of the principles from Star Trek are in the book, if that makes sense, in terms of how we should treat one another as humans.
Yes.
And people that come from different backgrounds and so on and so forth. I mean, all of that stuff is weaved in there. Yeah,
because I wanted to kind of go back to this thing that this guy had said to me. He had come on the podcast to talk about Dune, but and what it was fascist like hate groups co-opting the books of Dune and the movies and all that stuff to it's like a recruitment tool to get people into like kind of like into hate groups. And
yes,
a lot of science fiction is used that way. It's bizarre. I had no idea about this until I read one of his articles, and so I was so fascinated by it. I was like, well, I need to know more about this because I'm such a huge sci-fi fan that I was like, I can't believe these things that I love so much are being co-opted in this way, and a fascinating thing that came out of that, something I was unaware of, but now in retrospect seems so obvious, is that these groups hate Star Trek, hate it because it can't. It's so inherently like inclusive, and the message is so clearly like let's live, like let's explore new life, new civilizations. Let's all humanity be
let's
one.
do it together, and not what's the classic episode with Frank Gorshin where he
yes
the split, the way he's black on one side, white on the other, and the other one is white on the other side and black on the other, but it's opposite.
Yes,
it's man, I wish we could get that as a species, but we're still working on it. But man, those principles hold up, and I honestly try to live by it.
To people that are unfamiliar with what Elliot just brought up, that's like the 1960s. That's an
old one.
That's James T. Kirk, and it is. Yeah, I love that you brought that one up because when you watch it, you're sitting at home on TV, and to us, we're like, this is absurd that these people hate each other based on which side of their face is like has the line on it, but no, we live in a society where people are acting like that all the time, and so
every day.
So I do love Star Trek for that. That's the like that everything's kind of it's an exploration, and it's a science mission, and we're all supposed to be doing it together, and it's all there's action and there's photon torpedoes, but it's a mission of peace generally.
For the most part, and of course for James Kirk to get women. I mean, clearly that was part of the directive because dude was cleaning up the galaxy by himself.
Yeah.
Mongering.
Player for life. Still, and oh man, he's William Shatner still out here kicking, and just he's still funny. I saw him recently. He was on a reality TV show. I only watched it because I knew he was a part of it, and he's still funny as hell, man. What is he like?
He is.
He's almost 100 years old, something like that, and he's just funny.
He's a good dude. He's full of energy. I actually had the great fortune of working with him on. You remember the show Boston Legal?
Yeah.
I did a guest star on that show, and obviously I wasn't around for the original Star Trek thing, but it was a trip being in scenes with James T. Kirk. I actually had to wrap my mind around it. But he was such a giving guy, and you never know how people are going to be, and your people that you idolize or that you've known for 1,000 years because of their work. And he was such a giving, or is such a giving person. And I'll never forget that, usually what happens when you go through your episodes and all, or the episode that's being taped, when your final scene is done, the director will generally announce to everyone that, okay, everyone, D. Elliot Woods is wrapped. And they kind of give you a round of applause or whatever. And then they run away because they're not really interested. He actually came over to me, gave me this big old bear hug, and it just felt like I was in the club,
Yeah.
And it was such a cool experience.
Yeah. And that's amazing too. I wonder if he was aware that you were also part of the Star Trek universe, or if...
No, I never brought it up. So if he knew, it never came up.
Oh, that's
it
cool,
never
man.
came up because at that point, I think I'd only done one Star Trek thing. But then after that, I got, 2 or 3 others.
And I guess like just kind of on the same note, I guess kind of what I was saying, like, how do you feel about Star Trek? That it has a positive message. I think we can all agree. But kind of moving forward into just like, I think a lot of people would argue that film and television, and especially franchises such as Star Trek, have done more to influence society to progress than oftentimes than actual legal policy change has. Perhaps. I mean, one could argue, at least. I'm not trying to say that I'm 100%, saying a fact here.
No, I think what I totally agree. And to add to it, I honestly think that in many cases, if it doesn't, it definitely affects people when you're in a theater, with the big, huge 40-foot screen and, all of that. But when it's done right, if nothing else, it starts a conversation that, it starts the ball rolling. And then if enough people get behind that, then it gets to the legal thing and the Senate and the House and all that stuff, and can actually change laws if it's a powerful enough message. Really inspire people.
For certain, I've seen films that have like moved me. Went into it and the film was so well made, and the message was, it's not, a lot of times it's better if it's not overbearing, if the message is just conveyed through the actors and the dialogue and in the whatever, and it kind of gets to you through your heart rather than your mind. And I think that's why it can be so powerful. Yeah.
I not trying to do a product tie-in, but it's the truth. There's actually that in, because my next goal is to get Rise of the Unicorn fully funded, and then make a feature film out of it. But there's actually a message in there that relates to all aspects of society. It's something that we all kind of go through, but I can't say what it is. All I can say is that we have normalized something that happens to the most vulnerable of us. We've normalized it so much that we don't even notice it. So I bring that up in the book. And again, as you said, once it becomes a movie, I'm hopeful that it'll start some conversations, and maybe we can change some things to help, all of those people.
Also, like I said earlier, I'm very glad that I chose the audiobook version, because right now I can so clearly see it on the screen in my mind. Having heard you kind of already act it to a certain extent for me.
That's what he meant. Yeah.
Not to say that if I had read it on paper that I would be like, how is this a movie? I'm just
this guy, he can't spell for shit. Yeah, what's his problem? No, it's interesting that you would take it that way. But to your point, when you hear how the author intended the words to sound, as opposed to you left to your own devices, you might come up with a different reading of a particular sentence and not catch whatever the subtlety was that I was trying to convey. So this way it's like, okay, well, if I could see his face, I'd understand it better, but still audibly, you understand where I'm going with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, let's just kind of go back a little bit just about you.
Sure, man.
By
the way, let me interrupt real quick. Yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me on the show. I am really excited. I got to tell you, I've been listening to the podcast, and I was a little nervous this morning, and I never get nervous for interviews.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah,
Well,
man.
I am, first of all, I'm beyond flattered because I was extremely excited for you to be on the show. And my morning was a little bit hectic. I'm still kind of a new dad. I
You
know,
are.
yeah,
Congrats.
and I've been learning more about you. I know that you're a father as well, so you kind of
Yeah.
what the new dad life is like.
Yeah.
So
So you haven't slept in what, 6 weeks? How's the
oh
baby?
well, I'm not that new. He's 7 months old, but
Okay.
it's
Okay.
still feels really new to me, man. I know people are like, "What are you complaining about, man?" I'm like, "Well, I'm not complaining. I'm not. I'm actually,
It shifts your life so much.
yeah,
And people say they understand, but you don't understand till you have one, or in my case,
yeah,
three. Then it's like, all right, well, now I know what everybody's. How come people say they're going to call you back and then they never do?
yeah."
Because if they've got kids, man, it just takes over your whole life.
I'm still trying to explain that.
Congratulations.
I'm still trying to explain that to some of my friends that don't have kids. Like when there's certain stuff I can't do, I'm like, well, I just can't, and they're like, why not? And I'm like, ah. Oh, but
Right.
I
The
guess,
old Doug would have done it. What's wrong?
but
You're
yeah,
getting
no,
soft.
this morning, because it's so like, let's say 10 months ago I had a podcast. I was like, yeah, I got 2 hours before this thing comes, before we're recording. I'll do whatever I want. I'll leave the
Right.
house. And now I'm like, I've only got 2 hours. I've only got 2 hours.
So I'm going to sleep for an hour and 58 minutes. Yeah. Yeah,
um,
man. It's a trip, but congratulations. It's a life changer. And now, if nothing else, I know you know what love is if you didn't before.
yeah. And it's a whole brand new, different type of love too.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's kind of a cool gift. Like, oh, there's a whole type of love I didn't even know existed. It's a
Yeah.
different element, different depth. But no, man, I'm always talking about my kid on the show. Let's talk about you.
All right. All right.
Going back a bit, I found out you're from Indianapolis,
Uh-huh.
hometown of Kurt Vonnegut, who's probably one of my probably most influential authors in my life, I would have to say. And I just wanted to like ask, man, are there like any authors for you that you'd say like influenced your worldview or inspired your creativity earlier in your life, like in your Indianapolis days? Kind of like because like for me growing up, I was Kurt Vonnegut was probably one of the first like grown up type authors I started reading, and I
Right.
was like, oh, I want to write, I want to I want to do stuff like this.
Oh, that's cool.
And I was wondering
Now,
if someone ever affected you that way.
well, it's funny that you mentioned Kurt Vonnegut. He actually, obviously not at the same time, but he actually graduated from the same high school I did. So
That's
I was
amazing.
aware of him. And, but I honestly didn't, I mean, I read what I had to read in school, but I wasn't as interested in reading. I hadn't developed that muscle yet. And I honestly got into reading through comic books of all things. Um, and then probably towards the end of the high school is when I started reading Toni Morrison. Um, man, I'm drawing a blank. And I read, started getting into James Baldwin. Those two were kind of the ones that opened up the door for me. I'm just like, oh, wow. And
Yeah.
then, by the time I got to college, and then I started reading voraciously. I'd have five books going at once,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Before children. See, this is what happens. Once you get kids, you get one book,
Yeah.
one book maybe. Yeah, but yeah, I used to read 5 or 6 books at a time. But it actually came later for me.
It's so funny you would mention that, man. Just the before and after with kids and how books are. 'Cause,
Yeah.
I used to read about a book a week, and in the past 7 months, I've read 2 books, and not including yours because I haven't even finished yours yet. So I'm hoping by the end of the next week I'll have 3 books down.
Look at you doing stuff. Yeah. All right.
Um,
No, I totally get it. Totally get it.
but yeah, going back, I had a similar thing because comic books is that's kind of like that was my definitely like how I got into reading too. Is giant X-Men fan above
Yeah.
all else. I don't know if there's like I really can't say that there's any other comic book franchise that comes close to X-Men as far as like what I was obsessed with. I've still got like probably 300 X-Men comic books just like packed away.
Oh,
I got them in a box.
do you have them in plastic and stuff?
Oh, hell yeah. They're going to be worth, if I ever come on hard times, man, I might be able to just go sell all my X-Men.
Man, I had, when I went to college, I had taken my comic books, stored them carefully into a grocery bag, put the grocery bag in the garage, and I was like, okay, they'll be safe there. And didn't think about it for 3 years. And I came back to Indiana when my mom was still there. And I went looking for these comic books. And not only had she thrown those away, she had also thrown away another bag full of Hot Wheels. With either bag, had I still had either bag, I could have bought a house.
Oh my God. Were you like, Mom, you just threw away my first house?
It's just like, why'd you thought it was trash? Like,
yeah.
oh man. Yeah.
Of course a mom would think it was trash. It looks like a bunch of old crappy comic books.
Yeah, exactly. old books. It's like, well, yeah, but anyway, I'm not bitter. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
Speaking of, while you were away at college, you played ball in college, right?
Yeah, played basketball.
Where did you go to college?
The Colorado College. It's the liberal arts college in Colorado Springs, and at the time there were 1,800 students, and now it's up to 2,200. We're growing.
Oh, nice, man! A nice small school. That sounds fun.
Yeah, it was. It was actually what I needed because I did have a chance to go to school, basketball and all that.
Yeah.
But where was it? There was Minnesota, and then later on, Wyoming inquired as to whether or not I wanted to transfer, for sports.
Yeah.
But there's something about going to class and there's only, 15 other people in the room.
Yeah.
Maximum size 20, as opposed to being in an auditorium. I still haven't figured out how people learn like that. I don't get that. I like the one-on-one with the teacher. Yeah. So my personality, I kind of needed that.
Oh yeah, man. So did you go there with the intention of studying like theater, any of that kind of stuff, or was that was that on your radar?
As you mentioned earlier, I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana. That, especially when I was coming up, it was like literally, boy, you better get you a good job. Yeah. That was planted in my head. So I didn't know what I was going to do. But initially I assumed I'd come back to Indianapolis and I would get a job at, one of the big plants or companies there. And then once I got away from Indiana, I was like, okay, well, maybe I won't go back to Indiana, but it had been planted in my mind that I needed to get a good job. So I stumbled into acting because I literally, playing basketball, I had hurt one of my legs and I was kind of moping around because, I was going to be out for 2 months or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And so I ended up picking a class. Here's something unique about Colorado College. You take one class at a time for 3.5 weeks.
Oh, nice.
But in the 3.5 weeks, you do a semester's worth of work on that particular course. So, like I said, I was looking for an easy class because I was moping around and I was hurt. And I saw that there was going to be a visiting professor. And I'm like, okay, I can bully that person. And it was going to be an acting course. And I'm like, well, shit, how hard could that be? The visiting professor happened to be Alfre Woodard. And when I tell you she would not let me sit in the back of the class, she wouldn't let me mope. She was on my ass on a regular basis, and I hated her. But one of the things that we were supposed to do at the end of the block or the end of that course, we had to put on a play that the whole city, not just the people on campus, but the whole city would come to. And I hated the practice. I hated the rehearsals. I hated the directing part of it, everything about it until the night of the performance. And when I tell you, I walked out on stage to a packed house and I could literally feel the audience going on a journey with us. And I was like, oh man, it's one of the few things outside of sports I'd ever done that felt like home immediately.
Yeah.
but I didn't know it until I walked out on the stage opening night. And she was just such a powerful figure, and came at the right time in my life. That was when I got a thought that, maybe I could do this. That's where
Yeah.
it started.
All right. Well, thanks to her. Shout out, what's her name again?
Oh, Alfred Woodard. Oh, you'd know her if you saw her. If you look her up on IMDb, you're gonna be like,
Oh. Okay, I'm gonna feel like a fool later when I do look her up and go, oh shit.
Yeah, you might get some hate letters behind this one.
I do get a lot of hate letters. I'm not gonna lie.
Nice.
We're actually gonna do a whole segment called Doug responds to hate mail. It's gonna be pretty funny.
That's awesome.
But I'm kind of curious, just because I assume playing basketball, there's a crowd, they're watching you. Does that kind of transfer? I mean, like, I know, like, getting on stage. So I guess I kind of had an opposite experience. I went to an enormous school with like thousands and thousands of students, and I had a double minor, and one of my minors was speech.
Okay.
So I was able to take an acting class and get credit toward my minor. But what got me was that was the first time, like, that I got put on a stage in front of a group of people to, like, recite some lines, and I was like, oh, whoa, this is a little bit frightening, or it was a weird experience. I didn't actually know I had any kind of stage fright, because I've also been in a lot of bands, I've been on stage a lot, but acting's a different vibe. You can't hide behind an instrument or a microphone. You're just right there.
It's you,
and
right.
it's like, yeah. So did you have any, or did you, like, just like fish to water, man? How did that feel?
It was fish to water that time. I think the only time it started getting weird, it wasn't so much audiences, it was cameras that I had to get used to.
Oh yeah.
When somebody, I know, we're audio and nobody can see this, so I'm just going to try to describe it. But when you have something coming towards you, and, if you really start thinking about it, it's like, okay, well, through that lens, there might be 1 million people that see this. And then you start playing these games inside of your head.
Yeah.
That was a bigger challenge for me than performing in front of, a group of people. And it could have been because of basketball. But most of the time it's because if you're really into the game or into the performance, if you're really into it, you don't hear anything else. You actually shut that out. But the camera was more of an obstacle for me than audiences were.
One of my favorite scenes regarding this was from the television show 30 Rock, when
yes.
Alec Baldwin's character Jack Donaghy, it's like his first time on camera, and he doesn't know what to do with his hands. So they give him a coffee cup, and then he doesn't know what to do with his other hand. So they give him another cup. So he has 2 coffee cups, and then he forgets how to walk. And so he's like kind of robot walking across the stage holding 2 coffee cups because the camera is freaking him out so bad. I don't know. You put that image back.
That's exactly what it is. And like I said, if you start doing mental gymnastics in your head about, oh my God, everybody in Indianapolis can see this, or whatever, then it's like, okay, let's bring it home, bring it back, settle down. Yeah, get this cat some medication.
I've got to visit Indianapolis sometime. I have a couple friends from there. You ever go to the big Indianapolis 500 race?
I did. I used to when I was really young, probably 6 or 7. We'd go out and watch the practice runs, the week before the race itself. I'm not sure. I don't think I ever went to an actual race, but I went to the practices probably 10 times.
Oh yeah, I would have gone to. I was when I was a kid, we used to get monster truck rallies here in Nashville all the time. And I love that. Like, nowadays, I think I would hate it. I think I would be like, this is too loud, I want to leave. But when I was a kid, like, they got the pickup trucks shooting fire out the back, crushing cars. I was like,
with the big tires and everything. Yeah. Well, look here, Dad, don't forget that little fella there, he's going to be wanting to go. So you will be going back. Trust me.
Well, that's the great part, is I'm going to relive all the stuff, man. I'm going to be like, back to monster truck rallies.
yeah. You're back there again. Disneyland or Disney World, they're going to get you. So don't fight it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm not fighting it. This is all stuff I'm looking forward to. Um, I mean, it's just kind of just like a off the top of the head question,
Sure.
without thinking about it too hard. I know because your IMDb is crazy, man. Like I didn't even bother trying to like start adding some of that in the beginning of the bio, but without thinking about it that much, like what was the role that you think you probably had the most fun performing as an actor? Just like that you like were like, man, I really, really enjoyed that.
The most fun. Ooh, good one. Probably Ballers. Um, they let me go crazy. The most of the time in television, you have to stick word for word to the script, and uh, there were some things that I had. I was a character. Hell, I can't think of his name right now. But anyway, he was a low-level drug dealer, hustler, smart mouth, that kind of thing. So, long story short, there was the scripted dialogue, and I always did the scripted dialogue, but they let me put in everything else that I felt like I wanted to add to the character, and they didn't use all of the stuff, but it was just a blast to be able to be free and be who you really think this character is. I think that was probably the most fun I've had. And speaking of crowds, a lot of time there were crowds because we were shooting that one, at least part of an episode down in Long Beach. And so a lot of people from the neighborhood were there, the camera crew, the producers, there were all these people. And so when I'm throwing in these ad libs, a lot of the stuff they couldn't use because the crowd would start laughing at some of the stuff I was saying. So that was, yeah. And it's like, well, there's not supposed to be a crowd here. Why is there laughter? That kind of deal. But yeah, that was a blast.
That's awesome, man. You were cracking up the crowd, cracking up the crew. That's got to feel good, man. That's got to feel really
it's
good.
like, okay, well, and then later on you find out you got something in your nose the whole time or something. It's like, that's what they were laughing at.
That must be a thing that happens sometimes where you just you have a take and you were like, that was it. I fucking nailed it. And then they're like, the director's like, hey, you gotta do that again. And then you're like, why? Is that
well, what's either that the other one that hurts is and it depends on your position in the show. Like, obviously if you're not a series regular, we were talking about, Captain Kirk earlier. Let's say you're in a scene with Captain Kirk and there's this back and forth dialogue that you two have. The audience and the producers really only care what James Kirk thinks. You're just there to deliver information. So you might have this one take where the tear came down, on one tear down the side of the face and everything else, and it was letter perfect. And then when you see it on TV, they show it from the back of your head.
Oh, no.
Because they're looking at James Kirk. It's murder. It's murder.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine just that would be devastating to me if I was like, yeah, man, I was with James T. Kirk. I nailed it. And then they show it and it's like the back of my head. It could be anybody. It could be anybody. Like no one's even gonna know it was me.
With your voiceover. That's it. It's like, yeah. And they show your face every now and then, but they were more interested in how Kirk felt about what you were saying than what you said.
Yeah, man. It's like there's so many pitfalls I don't even think about. All right, let's get a little more kind of into like the maybe tough question type things. And I think I think you maybe have mentioned in the past some things about how you I think we're talking about lived experience. And I think
yes.
What I ask is how would you describe how lived experience informs your work as a creator and as an actor, as an author, all of the work that you do?
It informs performance and also how, as a writer, not just what you write, but how it's written. Because the goal for me is not for people to look at me. The goal is for my performance to affect the people that are watching. Or in the case of, writing, it's to affect the reader or the listener or even the viewer when you're talking about television in terms of how you're delivering, the stuff. If when you're rehearsing, if it doesn't, like I honestly, like I'll, learn my lines or whatever. But when it's time for me, once I get the words down, I literally will look in the mirror and I will say the words to the guy in the reflection. And obviously I'm looking at the reflection. And so I'm looking to see if it looks true. It looks and sounds true to me.
Yeah.
And I know that if it looks and sounds true to me, then I know it's going to play for the camera. The harder one is, like you said, is for the book, because you can read it and do whatever, but it's like, yeah, but how are people going to take this? It's a different set of muscles. I hope I'm answering your question. Well, what I was going to say is that, it's like the basketball thing. It's like if you're really focusing on playing the game, then you don't hear all the other stuff. It's the same thing with performance, and it's the same thing with writing. Yeah. So that's the best way I can describe it. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. And that totally made sense. And I feel like maybe I could have phrased that into two separate questions, because obviously, let's say, like, rewinding back to the beginning of our conversation, we're talking about playing a Klingon on Star Trek, and how does your own personal lived experience necessarily relate to you're playing an alien, but at the same time, like, he has feelings, he has emotions, he's he has a life story. So I mean, I can definitely see how you add that in. You're like, how is this a real character? How do I make this guy real? And then I can see also what you're saying with the book.
Okay, now I got you.
Well, I guess when you said with the book, it's more like then you're digging deep into your own mind to find all, because the book is you like the book comes completely from you.
Completely. Yeah. And the thing with the characters, there's also, they tell you, okay, this guy is he's nervous. He's not drunk now, but he drinks a lot, so you get a set of, things that they want you to convey. So sometimes it's not necessarily a lived experience where you bring that up, but, everybody's got the drunk uncle. I literally have played a character like a person that I know.
Yeah.
And add their mannerisms and characteristics to the character that I'm playing, because maybe I don't have that set of experiences, but Lord knows I've seen it. So,
yeah,
you pull from everything.
That's almost a little bit of like a method acting technique. Am I right? Or I could be off base.
Yeah, it is. It is to a degree. Now, I'm not like 100% a method actor, but there are times when, for example, we were laughing about the Klingon thing. That was the one time I was killed in a Star Trek project. I've got some friends that are, 100% method. And when they die on screen, they lay down and they feel the cold coming in, and, the world is getting dark, and, they have all that on their face. Me, yeah. I just lay there, close my eyes, and don't breathe. But that's my dead. But, whatever gets you to the truth, or whatever looks true, is the goal.
Yeah. And I'm sure, there's a time and place for method acting, and like sometimes like that is really what's called for. And sometimes like you said,
yes,
your job is to fall down and die. As the viewer, I don't need to know that you're truly experiencing a death, like like that in your mind you're experiencing this terrifying thing while you're just lying on the ground looking dead. I don't know. I mean,
right.
Maybe I'm going to get some hate mail for that, for some people that are like, no, method acting is the only way.
You probably will. All the method actors are lining up outside of the studio right now. No, there's, as far as the end result, you don't need to know all that, I don't think. But if there's going to be a fall, or, he dies after giving this speech, then yeah, I'm gonna need to feel that differently than the guy that just lays on the floor and doesn't move. But it's what the material calls for.
Yeah. Um, I'm reminded of, before I go on to the next thing, I'm suddenly reminded of another anecdote that I just want to share, that I learned about the movie Mad Max Fury Road. And
Okay.
there's a guy, he has no lines. His job is to be on the front of a semi truck. He plays a guitar that shoots fire, and that's all he does. Is he plays guitar that shoots fire. It's
Right.
very cinematically, like visually, very very cool. And like audibly, very very cool. I mean, like, or sonically, very very cool. But other than that, this character has no name. I don't know what he's credited as. Maybe guitar player. But I found out later on that the actor had created like years of backstory for this character, and had method acted that, like, had prepared for that role in such an intense way that you never ever would have anticipated someone would do for such a role. So yeah, I guess it's your own personal choice, because if that makes the project more enjoyable for you or more real for you, then by all means, right?
Well, definitely that. And the other thing too is that if, he could have just phoned it in and just played the guitar and maybe it would have worked. But that maybe the preparation is what got him over worrying about what the camera was doing. What I described earlier about, how the camera can make you feel sometimes. If I think it's whatever you have to do to get to the truth and or get to a place where you are just in the game and you are playing the game, that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
And so that's how he had to get it done in order to, be on the front. What's funny, he was in the trailers, right?
Yeah.
For that movie. And I knew immediately who you were talking about, because, he got down without a word. And he's a memorable guy, just like the kid that plays the banjo in Deliverance. He said nothing, but he played those little three chords and he wore that role out. Awesome. Yeah, but you can see his face.
Yeah.
It's just unique. So, however you can get to the truth, man.
Yeah, no, I love that. And actually, I love the way you said that, however you get to the truth. Because, thinking back on it now, for a character that has no lines to be by far one of the most memorable characters from the film, there's something behind that. But hey, enough about Mad Max Fury Road. Let's talk about Rise of the Unicorn. I really want to talk about it some more. Hey, do you want to kind of start this with kind of an elevator pitch description, and then we can go from there, just so give people a nice little baseline of what the movie or what the book's about.
Okay, well, let's see. First off, everybody has seen movies with negotiators, so on and so forth. So before I get pitched, I just want to let everybody know that chapter 1 literally starts in a world that you have already seen on the movie screen and everything else. And I did that intentionally because I wanted people to assume that they knew how this was going to go. Yeah. Now, the elevator pitch. Rise of the Unicorn is about a negotiator that comes upon a failed bank robbery turned hostage crisis. There's a terrorist group inside of the bank, and there are 30 some odd hostages inside of the bank, and he's there to free the hostages. However, halfway through, he realizes that he is the actual target. And then he has to figure out why he's the target and what is it that they really want in order to get these people out. While the entire world watches because of social media. You know how the crowds always gather, at these scenes and the looky-loos. Okay, so you've got a whole crowd of people that are texting, tweeting, Instagramming. And so literally the whole world ends up watching this story unfold. So there you go. And I can't tell you what it's about because then it kills all the other plot twists.
Elliot, I have to say that I need to learn. you need to do a class on elevator pitches, because I struggle so hard to do an elevator pitch for any kind of project I'm ever working on. Even this podcast, I can't even tell people what this podcast is, like, in a very efficient way. I do my best, but I feel like I say something. The way you just elevator pitched the book to me just now, I was like, that was extraordinary. And you could have said that in an elevator. That if you were going to the 17th floor,
man, sometimes
you could have said that honestly on the way to like the 8th floor if you just kind of talked fast.
Yeah, talk fast and look real aggressive. Look, you fucking better listen to me, sir. Yeah. Oh man, no, thank you. It's taken a while to get to this point. I'll put it that way. It's not something that just rolls off of my tongue that way, because it's such an involved story. It's like, okay, well, do I talk about this? Well, if I talk about that, it's going to give away the plot, and so you kind of find your way with it.
So you're telling me that wasn't your first elevator pitch?
Not for that project. Now, if you ask me about the book that I'm working on now, I'll be like, well, they were in love. Okay, thank you, sir. Yeah.
Once upon a time.
Right?
Like, you ever never notice how people fall in love? All right, imagine a whole book with other stuff. Sorry, I'm rambling. All right, but I want to talk about this. So as far as I've gotten through, I love the characters. I think I said that in the beginning, and a lot of that too is your performance of the characters. But obviously, I would love them on the written page as well. How did you develop your characters for the book? Like, you developed the police chief, the negotiator, even kind of more minor characters like the domestic dispute in the beginning. Are these like, did you draw this from real life, or like, or?
There were a few things that I've actually seen in real life. The way my mind works, everybody goes through challenges, in their life. That's why we're here. So there's some things that I experienced, from as a kid, a young adult, so on and so forth. But I've also always been because of, some child abuse stuff, I was what they call hyper aware. I would walk into rooms, and subconsciously I would scan the room, and I could tell you where, if there was going to be a problem, I could tell you who was going to cause it, because I was, that sensitive. And so some things are from things that I experienced. Some are from me watching other people, and the impact that some of the foolishness that we do to each other, the impact that it has on us. And I am always looking for ways to fix the problem or stop the threat. And so I was literally sitting in the bank. I was actually getting ready to fix up the house. And I was there to get a home loan, for remodeling and everything else. And I was sitting in the middle of a bank lobby, waiting for the personal banker. And it hit me that the bank and money, it was the perfect metaphor for this issue that I bring up in the book.
Yeah.
And so then I sat there and I literally looked around the bank, and I reverse engineered how to rob it in a plausible way.
Wow.
And and so that's how the idea came. The characters come for me is once I have the basic structure of the story, the characters come, like I was saying before, you get to the truth however you can. Yeah. Literally, as I'm writing, another character will pop up that will help me get through a particular block that I'm having with a scene. Why I can't get through this? Well, how come? Well, because you need a guy that walks in and does such and such. Ah, okay. And the dialogue comes easy.
Yeah.
What they say comes easy. It's what they do that is sometimes the problem for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of it feels real too. Like there's a kind of a custody battle type dispute going on between one of the main characters and a character that is kind of off screen, or I guess off. Yeah,
that's just life.
And that's just life. Yeah.
Yeah, it's life stuff. But what's crazy is, what's the best way to put that? Between chapter 1, the scene that you're talking about, it's like through watching him live his life, you learn who he is without me saying, Gus is a really nice guy.
Yeah.
He is a divorced father. It's like you actually get to see it and feel what he's going through. And then that explains why he is acting the way that he acts later on, because his day started off, way over here in left field.
Yeah.
So they always say as a writer, you should show it, not tell it. And so that's what that stuff's about.
Yeah, you do a good job too of not just right off the jump being like, he's the hero, he did nothing wrong. Because I think there's a line from like maybe his captain, someone who's, because he's like, I need to get on my Skype call or something to talk to my kid, and she's like, what did you do? Like, what did you do?
Yeah,
why is it your fault that
right,
you only get to see your kid on Skype? And I guess that's maybe something else I wanted to ask is like, what do you hope readers will take away from the book, besides just enjoying the book itself? Because it's a suspense thriller, it's a mystery, so it's fun, but there's some underlying themes and messages, and I know we're not trying to spoil anything, but maybe what you can share without giving away too much.
Well, it's kind of like what we said earlier, and honestly, I can't talk about it because if I say it, then you're gonna be like, "Oh, that's where this is going."
Yeah.
All I can say is, one, I want people to really enjoy the ride, but when they see how collectively what we do in every race. So it's not a black thing, white. It's like, this is what we do as a people. What I'm really hoping is that it starts a conversation that turns into, legislation or fodder for the political groups, and they'll use it to get elected or whatever. I don't care, as long as we fix, this problem as a society.
Yeah.
I'm just hoping that it's part of a conversation starter, that smarter people and people in politics and all of that can then take the ball and run with it. But like I said, it's so normalized in our society. Everybody just accepts it. The stuff that happens that we do to one another, and it affects us. I just, it would be nice to see that begin to change.
It's like we said earlier when we were talking about film, television, novels, how that changes society, like in a way that, like, oftentimes, a politician doesn't have the power to do that, because a politician doesn't have the power to reach in and affect the way you feel inside, the way a novel can or a movie can.
Right. And that's why I'm really pushing to get this, up to the big screen, because, there's a niche group of people in America and around the world that read, but a lot more watch movies. And if this has an impact of, what are some of my movies here? Well, I like all kinds of movies. So, but, everything from the Round Midnight, Good Will Hunting, Whiplash. Oh, have you seen that one?
I haven't. That's about the drummer.
Yes.
I haven't seen that.
Okay. You need to stop, not stop doing what you're doing, but after we're done, you go to Netflix and look at that one.
Yeah, I love J.K. Simmons, so I think I'll enjoy that.
Yeah, he's a beast, man. But even Citizen Kane, Imitation of Life, the old movies, all of that stuff informs us and makes us feel a certain way. And like you said, it's a great seed planter, and people sometimes literally walk out of movie theaters changed about particular issues. I'm hoping that something like that would happen with this.
I have another question about the book, and because I'm not far enough in, I don't know if maybe this is a spoiler, a spoiler type question. So if it is, we'll just leave it alone. If it's not, then I'm just very, very curious. How did you come up with the title of the book? Why is it called Rise of the Unicorn?
Unicorns are supposedly don't exist. But when we're children, we believe in unicorns because, we haven't accepted all of the no's that the world tells us about, later.
Yeah.
And eventually you get to a place where you don't believe in unicorns anymore because you've never seen one in person. Well, and yet the word remains. It's about being different than how we walked into the situation. And if you really get the message, chances are you're going to want to adjust yourself, and you're going to be the weird one in a group of people, but then you actually become the unicorn. That's the best way I can describe it.
All right. I love that. I love that description, especially because I am often the weird one in a group of people, and I don't mind that at all.
Well, honestly, that's the thing. It's like, we all should be the weird ones, but we are so concerned with what other people think, and what our parents taught us, and all these things, that we eventually get in lockstep and we all start moving the same. And that's fine if it's something that's good for everybody, but if it's not, somebody's got to fucking say something.
Yeah.
Or do something different, because otherwise we're going to end up marching off of a cliff together.
Yeah. Yeah. And man, like in the times we live in right now, man, couldn't have been said better. And well, actually, I guess what I want to say is, I guess kind of here at the end is, I do have one last question. It's going to be the most important one, but I do want to say I am loving this book so far. I'm actually so excited to go put my headphones on and finish it, because now you've built it up even more, because I'm only to chapter 5, so I'm like, oh my god, I gotta know, because that's why when I was concerned about asking you about the title, because I was wondering if there might be some line in the book where that's like, you're not supposed to know that until later on. That's what I was going to say. But my question is, Elliot,
okay,
where can people find you, follow you? Where can they check out your book? All the good stuff. Any other projects you have going on? If you could just share everything.
Okay. Well, let's see. Let's do it in reverse order. Projects going on. Well, okay, the strike is finally over, which is good. At least until we have this ratification vote, and I'm hopeful. But I've been getting a ton of appointments and auditions. And there's one thing I'm dying to tell you about, but now they've got this stuff set up so much that you have to do all these NDAs.
Oh, no.
You can't say shit. So I have stuff happening, but I can't tell you. So there's that.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, hopefully you guys get really excited about nothing, because I can't tell you a damn thing.
I'm excited about it, whatever it may be. I will tell you that.
Yeah, well, it's a good one. So I'm very hopeful for that, fully coming to fruition.
If you're in it, I will watch it.
Find me. All right. Well, let's see. As far as how to find me, I'm pretty easy to find. My name is spelled D, period, and Elliot is Elliot, and Woods, obviously, Woods. But D. Elliot Woods, and pretty much without the period, but all one word, in, let's see, Twitter, Instagram. I have a TikTok account, but that's not for me. It's too much.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same on Facebook as well. So that's how to find me. And offshoots of that are Unicorns Rise Up on all of those platforms. So plural, Unicorns Rise Up. If you are interested in particular in what's going on with the Rise of the Unicorn, I just call it a project because I've written the script, written the book, done the audio book. And so now the next step is, like I said, to turn that into a feature film, using some of my more famous friends. And let's see, what else is going on? I'm sorry, you asked me one other question and I lost it.
Asked, where can people find you, follow you? Where can they find your book?
The book. The book is literally on every major platform. Barnes and Noble, Walmart. I mean, it's the book is everywhere. However, the audiobook is only on Amazon, Audible, and iTunes. So if you're an audiobook person, those are the only 3 outlets for that. But as far as either written or ebook, you can pretty much go anywhere that you normally shop, and you will find Rise of the Unicorn there.
And I highly recommend you do. I'm enthralled. Elliot, man.
Well, hopefully you'll call me up and go, oh my God. That's the reaction I usually get because, like I said, the way I set it up, everybody thinks they know, how this is going to go. It's, this is going to be a standard procedural. And it's like, well, yeah, until chapter 8.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, okay, got it.
I mean, I could already feel the vibe changing pretty fast. At first, I was like, okay, cool. Like police drama, whatever type thing. And then I was like, okay, turning into like some pretty like high tech heist. And then you're like, and you're like, oh, but you don't even know what's going on. I was like, so no, like I said, no. Oh man, I can't wait to find out. Elliot, thank you so much for coming on my Views Around podcast, man. It's been an absolute pleasure to finally meet you and finally get to speak to you.
Doug, I'm honored to be here, man, and I really enjoyed the conversation. I'm a little disappointed that it's done. Can we talk for another hour? Would that be all right?
We could, but I have to go get my kid from his mom, or I'm going to be in big trouble. So
yeah, you will. Yeah, you will. Well, take care of that little fella, man. But thank you so much.
And hey, have a fantastic weekend, man.
All right, brother. You too.
Bye.